El mundo ha evolucionado en las últimas décadas más de lo que lo ha hecho desde el origen de la humanidad. Nos adentramos en una nueva era. Todo parece indicar que se acerca el fin de la vida humana como la hemos concebido durante 4 billones de años. Una vida de humanos que nacen, crecen, se reproducen, envejecen y mueren. Ahora estamos a punto de vivir el gran salto. La ciencia nos abre numerosas puertas, entre otras revertir el envejecimiento, reprogramar nuestro ADN y curar enfermedades que ahora mismo no tienen cura. Con esta entrevista pretendo desvelar las incógnitas del futuro que está por venir.
Hi Aubrey, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure. Do you think we will ever stop aging?
Actually, we will do better than stopping aging. We are quite close now, I believe, to actually reversing aging. Taking people who are already in middle age or older, maybe 60 or 70 years old, and repairing the damage that aging has done to their bodies so that they become biologically younger than that, maybe 30 or 40. So
that sounds so good.
So of course this is kind of equivalent to stopping aging because we can do it repeatedly, right?
Yeah.
We can do it every 20 years or whatever. But it's really damage repair.
Okay, but step by step, yeah? You say that the solution, the aging solution, is not in biology. Why do you say that?
So really the way that I think about aging is based on physics, not so much biology.
So like a car?
So yes, so I see a similarity between the way that living organisms age and the way that non-living machines like cars or aeroplanes age.
Yeah.
In both cases, they are damaging themselves throughout their existence as a consequence of their normal operation. It's just like, it's basically thermodynamics. It's something that is not specific to biology. And because of that, we can think about what to do about it in the same way as well. We can look at how we already have the ability to take cars that were designed to last 10 or 15 years and make them last for 100 years.
Yeah, this is why you say the important thing is not know or understand how works an organ. The important thing is repair it, yeah?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's another part of the thing. The main thing is that if we know how to eliminate the damage that has accumulated in a machine, whether the machine is living or not,
Yeah.
then we don't need to understand the details of how that damage occurred. For example, a car mechanic needs to understand that rust is bad for the car and that he should eliminate the rust so that the doors don't fall off.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have to understand the chemistry of rusting in order to do that.
What's your plan to slow down aging or stop aging, change the situation that we have now? You have 7 kids.
So the reason I am rather careful to say that I'm all about reversing aging, not slowing it down,
Yeah.
is because that was a really hard argument for me to win. The main thing that I'm known for in this field is that 20 or more years ago, I started to think and to say that actually repairing the damage that the body does to itself is going to be much easier than slowing down the rate at which the body generates that damage in the first place. Whereas everybody else was thinking the opposite. They were thinking about slowing it down.
Yeah.
And they weren't getting very far. So it took me maybe 10 years to win that argument. I published my description of how we would do that in 2002. And it consists of dividing the many types of damage that the body does to itself into 7 big categories.
Yeah.
Then a decade later, a few other people came along and basically said the same thing in different ways. They divided aging into 9 categories, but it was the same idea. And when they came along, the time was right. You know, that I had won the argument, and so everybody started believing it.
So how long do you think we have to wait to reverse the age?
Yeah, so of course any pioneering technology is, we don't know. And unless something is very close, like 2 years away, we cannot confidently predict how far away it is. So I like to give a probabilistic prediction.
Yeah.
I say that I think we have a 50% chance of getting to a decisive level of development of these technologies within about 15 years.
15 years.
15 years, that's right. But I also say that we have at least a 10% chance of not getting there for 100 years. That's how I emphasize the uncertainty.
What is your basis to this assertion?
I come up with my prediction about timeframes by looking at the details.
Yeah.
I am always, I oversee a lot of the key research that needs to be done to get there. So I have as good an estimate, a knowledge as anybody does of how far we have to go from where what we can already do to what we need to do, and how rapidly we are making progress, what the current obstacles are. So if you and I were speaking for an entire afternoon, then I could explain it in technical details. But basically, it's because I look at those details and I just make a subjective estimate.
You say that we have 7 keys, okay? But can you let us know more about those 7 keys?
Sure. So, I could list them all, but that would
one by one,
that would be boring. So let me just focus on 1 or 2 of them and explain why they are categories, what it's all about. The easiest one to talk about is loss of cells. So this is when cells die and they are not automatically replaced in the body by the division of other cells.
Yeah.
Right? Normally, of course, that is what happens.
Yeah.
But sometimes it doesn't happen. So the number of cells goes down.
Yeah.
Right? And of course, every cell has a function in the body, right? And there is redundancy, there is a bit of margin of error. But eventually, if you have lost too many cells of a particular type, then bad stuff happens. So a good example of this is Parkinson's disease. Yeah. It is caused by the loss of a particular type of brain cell, a particular type of neuron, in a particular small part of the brain called the substantia nigra. And everybody loses a lot of those cells during life because they work hard and they die more often than most brain cells do. But mostly people only lose maybe 1/4 of the cells that they had when they were young adults. And that's okay, that's within the margin of error that the system is built to tolerate. But some people lose them faster. Maybe they've lost 3/4 of the cells that they had when they were young, and those are the people who get Parkinson's disease. So what are we going to do about it? We're going to put in replacement cells. That's what stem cell therapy is. You put in cells that know what to do to divide and transform themselves into replacements for the cells that the body is not replacing on its own. And it works. It works incredibly well. So there are already clinical trials to develop this properly, and this will be a real cure for Parkinson's disease. Now, this is where I want to emphasize the importance of the classification. I mentioned that there are lots and lots of different types of damage. And so all we're doing here is we're putting those many, many types of damage into 7 boxes. Right?
Yeah.
Why should that be useful? The answer is because the repair is useful. So if we talk about other parts of the body that lose cells during aging, so there's a type of cell called a pacemaker cell in the heart, which is responsible for the brain instructing the heart how to beat, how rapidly to beat. We lose those cells as well. Again, you can fix this with stem cell therapy. The stem cell therapy will not be the exact same therapy that it would be in the brain, but it will have a lot in common. So once we get 1 or 2 stem cell therapies working, getting the next one working and the one after that is going to be much easier and much quicker. And that's very, very important. And it's the same for all the other categories.
Okay, what you say sounds good and has sense listening to you. But a lot of scientifics, most part of scientifics, are very prudent and they don't say this. In fact, they criticize this kind of affirmation, So what can you say to them?
I have great sympathy with my scientific colleagues who have not had the good luck that I have had to be able to escape the political pressures. Most of my colleagues have to worry about people who are scared of the possibility that we might bring aging under control because they have stupid reasons like, oh dear, where will we put all the people, or how will we pay the pensions, or doesn't death give meaning to life? There are people like that out there who have a great deal of influence over which scientists get their grant applications funded and which ones don't. And that means that almost all of my colleagues have to say things in public that are much, much more cautious than what they would say over a nice glass of Rioja.
So you think they don't say all that they know?
I know that they don't, because I have sat with them over a nice glass of Rioja many, many times. It's a small field, we're all good friends.
They criticize you because you are not a biologist. In fact, you started as an informatic, but finally you study a lot and you did so many things, and you have a lot of credit, and reputation. What do you want to say to all those people that say you that?
I don't really want to say anything to those people, because they are only saying that because they need to. They wouldn't be friends of mine if they really thought I was crazy.
Do you consider yourself transhumanist?
Yes and no. I think of myself as sympathetic with the transhumanist goals, which are all about developing technology that will dramatically improve human quality of life and, of course, quantity of life. So in that sense, yes, I am a transhumanist. But philosophically, I think it's, I don't think of it as a philosophy. I consider myself to be a straightforward technologist. I don't think of myself as a philosopher. And especially, I have some problems with the word transhumanism. I believe that it scares people unnecessarily.
Yeah.
It is important, in my view, to emphasize how the goals that we have in technology today, whether it's medical technology or anything else, are a continuation of the goals that technologists had in the past that have successfully improved people's lives. The continuity is what we need to emphasize in our outreach, in our public communication of what we do, because that is how people will be reassured that what we are trying to do will be good for them.
Because sometimes it's like a show, yeah?
Yes.
What do you think about the cryopreservation?
I have been supporting cryopreservation and cryonics for 20 years. I think, to me, it is obvious that cryonics research is a hugely important component of medical research, that you only have to understand the absolute basics of what death is, how we get sick, why we get sick, and about how medical progress continues in order to understand that cryonics makes logical sense and that it can, in the future, save a huge number of lives. Therefore, I think it's extremely important not only to accelerate research into doing cryopreservation better and better, but also to disseminate it, to tell people about how cryonics will save lives in the future.
José Luis Cordero says embryos are frozen, and he says, why it won't work on whole bodies? But it's quite different, yeah?
Well, it's not qualitatively different. The reason why we can already freeze embryos is because it turns out that freezing very small things is technologically much easier than freezing big things.
Yeah.
Freezing big things, you have new problems that have to be solved, and that is what we are trying to do these days. But yes, he is completely right that it's more difficult, but it's not impossible. And that's why I believe that we should be accelerating this work so that it becomes possible.
The amazing thing is that some people now are choosing, some of the people that are deciding to cryonicize by themselves, they are choosing cryonicize just the head, not the whole body, the head, I mean.
You think that's crazy?
Well, it depends of the sense, the evolution, if we can clone the body, if we can have later on the same body.
So already people have succeeded to some extent in growing whole organs in the laboratory that they can transplant into the body. We are not very good at it yet, but we are getting better all the time. And it seems most people who work in that area are very optimistic that quite soon we will be able to replace organs this way. Now, the body, if we take the body from the neck down, is just one rather complicated organ, right? It has different parts that have different functions, but really, if we can do it with a single organ, like the heart or the liver or the kidney, then why not do it with the whole body? And if we can do that, then from a cryonics perspective, it makes sense to do it. It would be better to give a revived person a young body. Now, of course, we could also take their old body and repair it in the same way that we are trying to repair bodies whose hearts are still beating today. But we don't know which of those things is going to be easier, and in particular we do know that it's going to be very difficult to revive the brain in the first place after it has been cryopreserved. So it's a fair bet, it's very likely, that by the time we will be ready to revive somebody's brain, we will also be able to build nice new shiny bodies to give them.
Okay, you are so optimistic, but...
Well, I'm not really optimistic here, I'm just talking about the relative difficulty of these things.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that it's harder to revive...
But once this is going to happen...
We don't know whether that's going to happen 10 years from now or 100 years from now, but still, I think we can...
How long do you estimate?
Before we can revive people? Very difficult. Of course, it depends enormously on how well they were cryopreserved, right?
Yeah.
So today we have a certain technology for cryopreservation, and honestly it's not very good. That's why I am funding a lot of work to improve it. And it's why other people are also doing the same thing. But even with technology we have today, there are lots of things other than the technology that matter. Sometimes people die without anybody noticing, and it takes a day before anybody finds out, and that is terrible for the quality of cryopreservation, things like that. So we need to improve many things about the whole cryonics industry, not just the technology.
One of the big problems is the huge loopholes in the law. For example, in the USA maybe it's easier, in Spain it's quite complicated.
So the legal situation around cryonics, as you say, is very different in different places, and some places have had very restrictive legislation which has been overturned. British Columbia in Canada is a great example of that, and there are people here at this conference who took part in the change of the law there. So, of course, that is what we must try to do, to make cryopreservation more legally available to people. But there are actually other aspects that make cryopreservation easier because people in the law don't understand it. Here's the main thing: insurance. Cryopreservation is quite expensive, and most people don't have much money. So the question is, how would they pay for it? Today, they can pay for it with life insurance. When the person becomes legally dead, their life insurance pays out, and that can pay for their cryopreservation, but only because they're legally dead. And of course, cryonicists do not think that the person really is dead, right? So if legislators were more enlightened, it would actually be a problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Looks like that it's not possible to be younger. I don't know, maybe you tell me another thing. Is it possible?
Today?
Is there any way?
No, today it's not possible.
Because of the telomeres?
Yeah, telomeres don't have all that much to do with it actually, but there are lots of reasons why at the moment we cannot remove much of the damage that the body does to itself. However, we are quite close to being able to do that. We have to be fairly comprehensive about it in order to really postpone the time when people get sick, because these many different types of damage, any one of them can make you sick and kill you, you know, more or less on schedule, however well we fix all the others.
Okay, while we are waiting that moment, what can we do to slow down aging?
There's two things here. There's slowing down aging and there's hastening the time at which we can reverse aging.
Yeah,
okay?
while we can reverse
you want to do both of those things. You want to slow down aging as much as you can, and you also want to hasten the point where we can reverse it. Now, at the moment we can do very little to slow it down. Essentially, so long as you live the way your mother told you to, and you don't smoke, and you don't get overweight, and you
healthy life,
reasonably, Mediterranean diet, things like that, then you're doing more or less all you can do. There's not much you can do over and above that. But there are plenty of things that people can do to hasten the time when we can reverse aging, which amounts to the same thing, right? It increases your chance of getting, right? You're doing the main thing right now. You're interviewing me.
Yeah.
Right? That's really important. enlightening, educating people.
Let people know
Yeah, that's right. That is
where
what,
are we moving.
That's right. That is what will change public opinion. That is what will change public policy. That is what will have more money spent on the research. It will make the research go faster.
Okay, Aubrey, it was a real pleasure to interview you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please let me know any improve, yeah?
Sure thing.
We'll be waiting your news.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.